we don't glorify self-care around here. We glorify self-leadership, because most of self-care won't do anything to help you move forward. It will give you some relief in the moment. A spa day, going getting a massage, taking some time to yourself or whatever. If you don't get to the thinking behind what got you to this shitty situation you're in, even after you get a little respite for a minute. I mean, the amount of people that complain to me about vacation once they get back is breathtaking.
Hello, my friends. My name is Chad. This is the Naked Leadership Podcast, high-stakes conversations for relentless company founders. My co-host and I have over 6 decades of combined experience in leadership coaching, and this podcast is where we explore it all. There is no conversation too risky. This week, Adrian and I sit down to chat about who our first client actually is and what in the world does that mean. Of course, with your clients and your customers and your products and your services, you are attentive, you're innovative, you're always looking for the edge, listening for the feedback. You have to, or you wouldn't last in the competitive market. But do you do the same with your team? Do you take the same approach with the people who work for you? Let's dive in. All right, here we are. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm good. Good to be with you.
Good. Hey, right at the top, really quick, Dan's still out, enjoying time with his family, so he won't be joining us in this conversation. We're going to do the best we can without him.
Sipping Mai Tais.
Sipping
Dan,
Mai
if you're
Tais.
listening to this, then, enjoy it. Get one for me. Love you.
So, right at the top, I want to read this post from Gary Vee. It's on LinkedIn. And Gary Vee, I mean, he's if you know who he is, he's always got a little provocative way of saying shit. And so I thought this was a good conversation starter for this week's episode, this podcast. So here is Mr. Gary Vee. Bosses, listen up. It's time to drop the entitlement and start treating your employees like fellow human beings. I can't tell you how many small business owners and managers I've encountered who act like their employees are there to serve them. It's obnoxious and it needs to stop. When you own a company, it's easy to expect your people to work as hard as you do. But here's the thing. Are you giving them the same money? Are you treating them with the same level of respect and appreciation? If not, you have no right to demand that they work like you do. I'm tired of seeing bosses who don't understand this basic principle. Your employees are not your servants. They are your partners in building something great. Treat them that way, and you'll see the results in your business. So, obviously, a bit of provocative language there.
Yeah.
But there's a strong invitation and a conversation that I wanted to have on our podcast. This is something that I experience in our organization, Take New Ground. Both you and Dan always say our consultants, our partners are our first clients. And partners in our organization would be similar to what others would call their employees or their team members. And, I think anybody listening to this has probably experienced this with other leaders or bosses where there is this idea of servitude or hierarchy. Hierarchy is one of the words that comes into mind for me, is like this thing that's set up where there is a value in place, and as it goes down the rungs, the values go lower and lower and lower, and thus people are treated that way. I don't know. I'm not fully on board on the pay thing that he says, but I am as far as the way that we're creating together and the level that we are on in creation. I'm fully on board for. So I wanted to have this conversation about this idea of our employees being our first clients. And that's an interesting idea, because what is it that you are willing to do for your clients? How do you view them? You probably view them as the source of even having a company or a business. Now, do you view the people that work for your company in the same light? So as I open this up, Adrian, I'm curious what you're thinking about. How do you start to think about this idea of either having a hierarchy and a team of servants? I guess we'll use it if we're going to use the provocative language, versus a team of equals who are here to create.
Yeah. Well, I naturally think about what sets us up to have the former conversation. I think it's worth stating the obvious that like when you do pay someone a salary, it is a value exchange.
Uh-huh.
And I'm paying a salary and I am expecting certain things in return from that.
Yeah.
And, so of course that's part of it. And I think the challenge though is that if I'm leaning on that as like the core tenet in the relationship, then I've already set the relationship up to fail, because I'm paying you, therefore, and I'm looking to get a return on that investment. And all of a sudden now I'm focused on the return and not the person generating the return.
Uh-huh.
And so they've already become an object to me. They've already become a vending machine. They're like, I put this money in and I get this stuff back. And damn it, that's the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And, I think naturally, as humans, we can't stop ourselves from projecting. Like we end up treating people like tools. And that makes sense to us because we treat ourselves like tools. Like so many hard-charging leaders don't offer themselves their own humanity. And so they drive themselves into the ground and then expect other people, which is probably Gary's broader point, expect other people to handle the type of relationship. How do I say this? Like I'm going to offer to them the type of relationship I have with myself, which is usually very self-critical and very demanding. And part of that is part of the magic of being ambitious and successful is I'm self-critical and I'm demanding. And if I start treating other people like that, though, I'm a tyrant.
Well, yeah, can I interject here just to bring
Please.
this to the ground? I have a client that I'm working with right now. I love him. He's such a good guy, brilliant dude. And he's got this business that is fairly new. It's about 3 years. I think they're in their 4th year of business. And he's really unhappy with the way that his life looks.
Uh-huh.
Meaning the amount of time that he works, his relationship to his family, you name it, he's in it deep. All of the founder complaints that we're in, he's owning all of them in the current moment.
Yep.
And then so take that. I'm just illustrating this point, right? So take that. He's very unhappy with the way that his life is currently right now. He's treating himself like a tool.
Yes.
Like I love the idea of a vending machine. He is doing this to himself. He views himself the same way. And then he's extremely unhappy with the performance of the people who are working for him.
Yeah.
Like, why don't they work harder? Why don't they care the way that I do? Why don't, all of this stuff, and they are a tool for outcome.
Yeah.
Just like he is.
Yep.
And it's,
yeah.
And it's so interesting, that the idea breaks down of like, oh, I'm wanting them to set up their lives in the same way that I have, that I hate.
Right. Isn't that funny?
That's wild.
Yeah. Yep. Misery loves company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, just think about complaints that you have as a founder, both of yourself and the business, and, what's not working in your life right now, and where are you wanting those who work with you to set up something similar?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Also, other aspects of this that I'm hoping, if you're listening, by the way, you're asking yourself some questions right now.
Uh-huh.
And how might you be using yourself as a commodity instead of really honoring yourself? because you'll end up. I'll just say it's like gravity. However you treat yourself is how you get to treat other people.
Yeah.
So, we don't glorify self-care around here. We glorify self-leadership. Because most self-care won't do anything to help you move forward. It will give you some relief in the moment. A spa day, going getting a massage, taking some time to yourself or whatever. If you don't get to the thinking behind what got you to the shitty situation you're in, even after you get a little respite for a minute. I mean, the amount of people that complain to me about vacation once they get back is breathtaking. Like, I took this vacation, man, took some time away, and I come back and I'm so overwhelmed and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, if you don't get a hold of the thinking that really created the hell, even if you got a momentary get out of hell free card, you'll go right back into it. So, leading yourself versus caring for yourself, because sometimes caring for yourself actually needs to be, I was going to say more harsh. But like, truth is a bitter pill. And that when I say harsh, I really mean that. Like, how am I prostituting myself? And how am I selling out to really, I'm just, people say it all the time. Like, I'm just going to put my nose down for the next 5 years. And I'm like, that's a long time to really hate yourself for a $5 million payout.
You don't know if you have 5 years, by the way.
Exactly. So, back to maybe some of the dynamics here. Most leaders are really great. They're kind of there. They're leading because they're really great at executing. And so it usually generates some possibility of success. I'm great at generating strategy and then executing on the strategy. And the kind of, I don't know if it's the hidden thing, but what comes out a lot is, like, in our work with leaders, is like nobody really taught them how to be in a generous relationship with people. And that's usually kind of it's the subtext of this X factor that Gary's talking about and it takes some faith to be generous with people.
Yeah. Takes courage.
Takes a lot of courage. Like, if I do understand someone, even if I understand the complaint that they're in, is it going to bring me more of the complaint? That's the conversation people are in. Like, if I like, at least as I hear from a lot of people, if I like go empathize with somebody that's complaining, is it going to get me more complaints? Or do I just need to take a baseball bat to them, and kind of, and that's a really, there's not much generosity or courage, to your point, in that conversation. There's a lot of fear and a lot of scarcity, and we don't know how to deal with the complexity of the reality that every human being is going to follow their interests. Like, as soon as this environment called work shifts, I'm looking somewhere else, consciously or unconsciously. And if part of looking somewhere else is disengaging here first.
Yeah.
Like, it's disengagement. And so they'll make you pay either overtly or quietly. All this quitting stuff is about that. It's a way to make bosses pay, a way to make the system pay, but a way to make capitalism pay is I'm going to collect what they've promised to pay me, and I'm going to slowly not give them the value that I promised at the beginning. My point being that most leaders that I'm with, they're so scared that if they take the hands off the wheel for a minute, and take their foot off the pedal for a second, that the whole thing's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And so they can't like slow down. I mean, anybody that's listening to this that has kids, you probably know the situation I'm about to bring up, where it's like you're on a road trip and you can push it until your kids piss their pants. Or you can decide on a regular basis. That's your style. Or you can decide on a regular basis to like pull over and like check in and see how they're doing, and go to we're going to stop and get some gas over here. We're going to stop and take a walk in this rest area for a second and give some relief, literally, to everybody.
And that's built in.
Yeah, it's built in.
Yeah.
And we're going to really check in around what people's experiences are, so that if the interests are misaligned, we can align them.
Because the difference is I just think it's worth teasing out. The difference is you could look at that as a hindrance to the road trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could, the bathroom breaks you can make it a hindrance to the goal of the road trip, which you've made up some arbitrary amount of time. Google Maps told you that the drive should take this long, and by God, you're going to beat it. And so everybody that's got to piss, everybody that needs to eat is a hindrance to this goal, this thing that you've set up as the aim. But actually, what you're talking about is that the stops and the pauses and the relief can be built in as part of the thing.
That's right.
Meaning we're successful if we pause. We're successful when we relief. And that's a real time of connection and getting clear and like reevaluating and getting energy back and, all of that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to it requires a reset of the purpose and the aim of what we're up to. And once you reset that, then you can get really committed to it. You can get really connected to it.
Right. Well, I don't think most people have this conversation with employees at the beginning where they sit and say, hey, I really want you to be enjoying yourself here. Because, happier employees produce more than disgruntled employees. Might seem obvious, but we don't act like that's that obvious.
Yeah.
Because we don't go check in for the dissatisfaction levels. We'll just do what we're talking about here, which is like expect this and just shut up and get the job done.
Well, because if there's dissatisfaction, we might have to slow down.
Might have to shift some things as a boss.
See it.
Take responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we come across this all the time when we're talking with leaders about getting their leaders in a room. If you're with us and we get leaders in the room, we're going to talk about how things really are. And that's a threat to the semi-productive status quo.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can build, I was talking to a potential client. It was a discovery call. Actually, it was a discovery coffee, which was great. It was in person. It doesn't happen very often. And he's a leader, executive, talking about a company that he was with before, and they're not doing so well. They're declining in pretty much every measure. And he talked about they developed a upgrades department. So they're selling this. It's an online service that they sell, and it's a membership basically, and so you're paying monthly for this service. And they developed an upgrades department, and the obviously the goal of the upgrades department was to reach out to the current clients and upgrade them into a higher package.
Right.
And he said, when we launched the upgrades department, we had more cancellations because people were realizing the product that we were providing wasn't worth the money that we were charging already. When we were it reminded them that they were paying us money for something that wasn't worth it. So we got more cancellations from the upgrades department than we got upgrades. So we ended up cutting the upgrades department.
Yeah.
And I just bring that up because most of you listening that provide a product or a service for people, again, coming back to this idea that your employees, your team is your first clients, is I'll bet you put a lot of attention in the service and product being something that makes them happy or that they can be happy with, that adds value to their life. And what you're talking about, Adrian, is having that same conversation with the people who come to work with your team and your company and under your leadership. Are you willing to have a pulse on whether or not this is working for them?
Yeah.
And lots don't. I know that it can sound so rudimentary, but so many don't have a pulse on whether or not this experience at my company actually adds to their life or takes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life is not fair. It's what you negotiate. Let me say that one more time. Life is not fair. It's what you negotiate. Now that's an interesting thought. If that's true, it means that everything you have in life right now, the possessions, the relationships, the fitness, the mindset, are all a product of your negotiations with others and yourself. And if that's true, wouldn't you want to be very clear on how you negotiate? What's effective and what's ineffective, what your strengths are and what your blind spots are? It is, after all, producing all the results in your life. So here's the deal. We put together a 15-question quiz that you can take in 5 minutes or less and find out exactly what your negotiation style is. The results of this quiz will give you insight into your strengths and blind spots in negotiation. It will also give you insight in how you can accentuate those strengths or compensate for the blind spots. Think for just 1 second with me all of the conversations you're having in your life. Think about compensation or advancement conversations with people on your team, discussing financial decisions with a partner, or just getting your kids to get their damn shoes on so that you can leave the house. All of these conversations are negotiations. This simple yet powerful tool has the potential to reinvent the way you get what you want in every aspect of life. Go to negotiation.takenewground.com right now, or click the link in the description of this episode and find out what negotiation style you embody. You can thank us later. Now back to the show.
There's so much here. I mean, when we're in this conversation, I just naturally see the whole web of conversations, and I'm trying to keep myself focused because it's like everything.
Stay focused.
Everything is so connected here. Back to some of these core conversations about how we see the world.
Yeah.
I'll just maybe just say this, is that if you're listening to this and wondering how you're doing, which I hope you are, I hope listening to this podcast is a self-reflective tool. It's not like you might get some tips and tricks and whatever, but I hope you're listening and then wondering about yourself and not to be hard, but just to open up possibilities for you, because you're probably going to, I know it's my conviction, every time I'm in these conversations, I'm convicted around my own leadership and asking myself a whole bunch of questions on how am I living this out, and am I living this out, and if so, how, and where am I not, and if so, why not, and what's going on for me, and what am I making up about that, and blah blah blah. So, I mean, if you're in this and listening like that, you might just go ahead and just take one very simple step, which is ask people what their level of satisfaction is.
That's what I was thinking. That was the next thing I wanted to talk about, is like feedback. Do you seek feedback from your clients?
Yeah.
Probably. Or if even as feedback exists out there in the world, are people tweeting about your product or your service? Are they posting about it on social media? And are you paying attention to that? And if you're paying attention to that, are you also paying attention to the feedback that's on your team and seeking it? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there are people on your team that are underperforming right now. Even if you tell yourself they're not, they probably are. And that's usually a deep invitation. We say it all the time with clients, like a broken commitment's a cry for help. And if there is underperformance on the team, it's a cry for help. And there's some people that it's just time to let them go. Like if they're in a chronic complaint about the team, you're on the wrong team. You're just on the wrong team. And I was in a conversation recently, so we use this Harrison thing, and which is this leadership assessment tool, if you've not heard us talk about it a million times. And there's a gauge, there's a factor, there's a score you get when you take it. It's called once a challenge. And most leaders that we work with have a really high once a challenge score, because they're ambitious and they're entrepreneurs and they love challenges and they bring it on. It's very exciting for them. And to quote a client I talked to today, she said, if there's not a challenge, I'm going to go make one, because she loves it, and it's, as you usually, this isn't always true, but pretty true, that as you work down the organization, that once a challenge score starts to drop. And right now, I've got a client that's hiring a C-suite executive, and I did this assessment, and the once a challenge score is really low. And my invite, she was going to move this person through to the next interview, which was an on-site interview, which would require flying this person from another part of the country in there. And I said, don't do it. Don't do it. Instead, have a phone call about this score and be really unapologetic about the type of leader you are. Because I don't think you should get off it. You love challenges. You say, bring it on. It's really exciting for you. And if this person works for you, and they don't want a challenge, they're going to be miserable with you.
Yeah.
Because you love challenges, and your mouth starts watering when something's really difficult. And if they don't want things to be difficult, they're going to hate working for you. They'll last for a little while, and they'll, gossip to their spouse about you and whatever. But eventually they're going to bail. So like if they're not aligned in the interest of like liking things to be hard, they're not going to like it. So my point being that there's some folks that are just a really bad fit because they want different things. They want different aspects of the environment. And as a leader, get really clear and really unapologetic about what you're up to and what you're committed to and what you really like. And you ought to talk about those explicitly with people. And if you don't know what those are, it'd be great to go have a Harrison assessment, because we could help you know a template of, what could be even invisible to you. Because like once a challenge score, when I point that out to people, they're like, oh yeah, that's totally it. But they don't have language for it, so they can't express it. And because they're hard charging all the time, people think they're just intense. No, I really love challenges.
Yeah.
Her anecdote for me was, if there's a mountain in front of us, we got a scale and there's a gondola, I'm probably going to put a backpack with 50 pounds on it and say, let's go climb this mountain. Because I don't want to take the gondola. I want to, load up backpacks and see if we can pull it off. Like, that's how crazy she is.
Yeah.
And anyway, there's some of this demonizing of people is really just a misalignment of interests.
That's right. I saw this interesting post the other day on LinkedIn. It really struck me. It was from a recruiter, and there's all of the. I'm not minimizing the effect that all of the large layoffs from tech companies have had and all of that sort of stuff, but she was really addressing this climate of headlines that are just so outside of. Anyway, that's too much background. What she said was, I'm in conversation with so many founders, so many bosses, so many CEOs, managers who complain that they can't find people who are dedicated, hardworking, and committed. And I also represent hundreds of people who are looking for positions, who are hard driving, committed, and want to be dedicated to something. So something's not lining up.
Yep.
Something's happening. And we have the advantage, we have the privilege of having the ear of you, the founder. And if this is your problem, that it's impossible to find hard driving, dedicated, committed people, turn the camera around. Please. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I just, maybe I am a little bit, but like, please
you don't have to
turn
try
the
that hard,
camera
Chad. You're an
around.
asshole.
If that is your complaint, just observe, where have these people become tools for you and not clients. So feedback was one of those ones that I wanted to bring up that I think most people do with their clients or customers, but they very often don't do well with their people. The other one is innovation. If you're a company who pushes the limits of your product and service to stay on the cutting edge, to serve people in the most impactful way you possibly can to stay ahead of your competition, to like all of that sort of stuff. If you put a lot of attention into your innovation for product and service, are you doing the same thing with your people, with your team? Are you constantly looking, how can we get the edge with these people? How can I get the edge? How can I innovate with these people in a way that we're top shelf, cutting edge? And yep. I think that's another question a lot of leaders don't typically ask themselves.
Yeah. Well, and I would add to that, because I think those are both great. And part of, I think, the challenge of leaders, which I think is understandable, is that they feel like it's their job to create the experience of their employees. Now, this might sound weird. It might sound counterintuitive to what we've been saying. What I am saying is this, is that if I'm looking for innovation, I got to check and make sure that the people that are around the table, do they want the same thing?
Yeah.
And are they willing to innovate themselves, which means like leave the really well-known territory that they call themselves. And I mean, I think part of this is just it hits me how bored people get so quickly. And most leaders aren't willing to shake up the process. And like even I'm just thinking on a very practical sense, like hold different types of meetings and actually generate tension. That's if you want to like find somebody's edge, you better generate some tension.
Yeah.
Because then now it's like, oh shit. Yeah, now I really got to show up to a meeting. Now, not everybody's going to want that. And they're going to want to like, just go be in attendance in a meeting instead of really be there, instead of be present. But I guess my point here is that to your point, well taken, are you innovating with your team? And then also, are you diving even deeper into that and checking in to see if you've got willing participants that want to innovate themselves? And are they there to actually grow, or are they there just to do?
Yeah.
And if you've not checked into that conversation, there might be a wealth. There might be like, if you drill into that, there might be a whole shit stuff, like great stuff that comes out of that.
Yeah.
If you invite people into, because there is plenty of thinking out there that work is just work instead of work is opportunity for myself. And I'm actually want to throw myself at something where I find my edge. I actually am pushed. I am pulled. I am, challenged. I am, I do find out what I got in the tank.
Yeah.
And that's a cultural issue.
That's all of that's the beauty of work, is that all of that's available for you.
Right on. Right on.
That's the beauty of being a team. That's the beauty of leadership, is that all that's waiting for you and waiting for the people that you lead if they're up for it.
Yep.
As a leader, you get to become a master of inviting people into it, and also a master at gauging whether they're up for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Great, man. This is a great conversation.
This is great. Hope you guys got stuff out of it. Love to hear feedback around this episode. Love to hear you disagree with us. That'd be great. I'd love to hear about like what you're doing to really innovate with your team and what came out of it. If you jumped into some of these conversations, we'd just love to hear some feedback about it. We're really craving some feedback on these episodes. So please let us know what you think. And anyway, we cherish feedback. So, and we'd love to hear what worked and what didn't work, because we're not doing this just talking microphones. We're actually doing it to make a difference.
That's right. Also, I don't want to miss the opportunity to mention the Revenant coming up in April in Boise. That is, once again, a playground. It's a gym for practicing feedback or practicing all of the principles that we're talking about in here. Is how do you see other people and invite them into something more meaningful? And it's going to be an incredible experience. Already it's filling up quite quickly.
Yep.
And the people who are going to be in this room are high level, powerful, really great, hard driving people. Yeah. This thing's gonna pop. Yep. So if you want to be there, you can go to wearerevenant.com. You can get registered as long as seats are still available. So check that out, or reach out to us if you got any questions. We'd be happy to hear about where you're at, and if this is right for you. Yeah. And again, wearerevenant.com. Otherwise, love you, man. Thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you for this. I hope you guys are all well that are listening. And let me just double down real quick to Chad's chagrin on the Revenant. I went to the Revenant over a decade ago, and one of the most impactful experiences of my life. And if you are at all committed to wanting to make sure your life counts at the maximal level, then come to this training, because it is going to be a place in which you get to practice self-mastery, get to practice accelerating the impact you can have on yourself and on other people. So I'm being extreme because I actually believe it this way. And I promise you, as one of the guys is going to be up in the room facilitating conversation, I'm going to be there 100% full go, not holding back at all. And I'll make a fool of myself for you. So hopefully, if not, I've held back and I'll beat myself up in the hotel at night. But I'm going to be all in, 100% all in. It's a unique environment. So it's not a place to come learn shit. It's a place to come practice the art of becoming the person you know you want to be.
I'll be right there with you in that level of commitment.
Oh yeah. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this one. Holy shit. I told somebody this is going to be the most impactful one we've ever had. I just got the sense that it's going to be so. And anyway, you won't want to miss it. So go check out that website. Make the space to come. And you won't regret it.
Yeah. Make the space. Nobody has the space.
No, make it.
Damn it. It's not just like sitting there. You have to make it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Move shit off your calendar. Do it now.
Yeah, we'll see you there if it's for you.
Yep.
All right, brother. Thanks for that.
See you, man.
Well, my friends, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Naked Leadership Podcast. As a heads up, every Friday we post a Cliff Notes version of that week's conversation with all the highlights in under 5 minutes. Check that out for a quick and powerful reminder of the principles discussed. I hope this conversation has been valuable to you. If it has, the greatest compliment you could pay us is sharing it with somebody who could use it. Thanks so much for listening, and until next week, bye-bye, everybody.